Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Gigantic Podcast. I am your host, and I am joined this week and every week by The Bridge.
Hello.
I think that's what we've landed on calling
The
you.
Bridge.
Or at least I've landed on calling
Am
you.
I
It's
over?
The Bridge.
Am I over troubled waters?
The Bridge. No troubled waters here. Speaking of troubled waters, we have had not a lot with this podcast.
Some pretty smooth sailing.
You guys have been super supportive of this show. We've gotten a ton of just really awesome feedback. I think more than either of us really expected when we had started this project. We've been posting some blogs up on our site, giganticpodcast.com. One of them, actually just today, I'm still kind of reeling, got shared out by Motiga. They're showing a lot of support. We've heard from some community coaches reaching out. Just everybody has been super awesome.
Yeah.
And
it's been great. Everyone's been so supportive.
Which is awesome, and we would love for you to continue that support. Feel free to continue to send us messages through our website. If you go to giganticpodcast.com, right up at the top, there's the contact button. That email goes directly to us. We try our very, very, very best to respond to any messages sent through there just as quickly as possible. But please check out our site. Leave us reviews on iTunes, comments on YouTube. One very, very funny thing that happened to our YouTube video. Actually, Bridge, I don't even know if I told you this.
What?
I misspelled gigantic on the splash screen for that episode.
See, this is what happens when you don't let the English major write.
No, it's just, and I'm so surprised nobody has pointed out anything wrong on my blog posts yet.
No proof.
A word on at least my blog posts. I'm very editorialized when I write. I just like to write the way I speak and have fun with it. I try my best to make it readable in terms of like grammar and spelling and all of that, but occasionally things are going to slip by. It'll happen, folks.
Yeah, just a proofread.
Yeah, just a quick proof.
Just a peruse.
Just a peruse. So, thank you just so much for all of the support. We've got subscribers coming in left and right. We've got lots of watches on our podcast, and just wow, we're blown away.
Yeah.
Like we're not doing this project for money or for fame or anything like that.
Nope.
We're just doing it because we love podcasting. We love the medium. We love Gigantic, and we want to talk to other people about it. So let's not delay that any further. Let's get right into it. So what are we talking about this week, Bridge?
We are talking about Gigantic as a MOBA and how we play the game, as it were.
Yes, last week we kept pretty subtle in our kind of descriptions of the game, and we kind of realized that maybe some of the people who are listening to the show perhaps may not have had the opportunity to play. It's been a bunch of different PAXs, and there are some people out there who are in the alpha, so there are people out there actually playing the game, but it's definitely safe to say that some people out there quite haven't yet, and maybe it's not really evident as to how the game is played, so that's what really we want to cover today.
Mm-hmm. And for the listeners or for the co-hosts of the podcast who didn't know what a MOBA was till a couple days ago, what would that be?
That is a multiplayer online battle arena. Basically, MOBAs got their start back in a little game. As far as I know, to be honest, I don't actually know if these are the origins or not. Could be making this up. Don't quote me on it. That's going to be my blog line. Is just don't quote me. On it. No responsibility here whatsoever. They got their start in a little game called Warcraft 3, which was a real-time strategy game. And some very fun people built this game called Dota, Defense of the Ancients. And it was basically, a top-down view playing these hero-like champions, trying to destroy each other's base in a symmetrical map with towers and all sorts of fun things. Worst description of probably a MOBA ever, but just know that in Gigantic's case, you're basically two teams attempting to kill each other's guardians on a symmetrical map with objectives and all sorts of fun things to do along the way.
See, you learn something new every day.
You do.
Every day.
You do. The more you know.
The more you know.
Star shoots out. So when you play Gigantic, and again, if you are a veteran at this point, or at least you've been watching and playing Gigantic for quite some time, either through PAX or through the alpha, you may find this episode a little boring, a little on the dull side, not a lot of new information.
Sorry.
Everything I'm kind of pulling off of here is from my recollection of the game at PAX, as well as the information that's on the Go Gigantic website, which is the official website of Gigantic. By the way, really quick aside, we aren't Motiga. We're not affiliated with them in any way. We're not community coaches. We're just people.
Our apartment would be bigger.
Yes, a lot
if
bigger,
that were true.
It's not. It's certainly not. But so let's talk about the heroes.
Yes.
Because there was a really cool graph that popped up during the introduction stuff at PAX that showed kind of the heroes' breakdowns in terms of what they do in a general sense. You've got your damaging characters, which characters designed to do high amounts of damage. You have your tanky characters who have kind of a high health pool and are sort of meant to soak up damage for your team. And then you have your support characters, characters that are meant to apply buffs and debuffs to the team.
Some
buff
healers.
being something. Yeah, some healers as well. So people who can do some healing damage. Not as much as I've seen in other games on the healing side, but there are some heroes who have abilities that can, put down healing things. It's the most technical term, by the way, is healing things. It says it right here in the site.
Don't quote him.
Don't quote me on that. So let's talk about the champions, or heroes rather, that we actually have had some experience with.
Yes.
Bridge, you played, as we mentioned last episode, you played HK. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, HK was, I think he was a robot, and he was, I don't know, a mid-range turret kind of thing, because he was very tanky, and you could just plop a squat, lay down fire.
You got those nice abilities that allow you to kind of make yourself immobile. E is fortify. You can't move, but you do get some extra armor, so you can ward off damage and lay down a lot of fire.
Yes, and it had it had range, but not as much range as some of the other characters who were designed more in like a sniping capacity. But you could definitely put some space in between you and your target.
You had a lot of ranged abilities.
Yes.
Up close and personal. Not necessarily your best suit.
No, I like the distance between me and my prey.
Yeah, we only got to play once, which was kind of nuts.
Well, I mean, we could have gotten back in line, but there was another.
There's a long line.
There was another 5 hours of our life.
So I got to play Voden, who is sort of this foxy little archer. Lots of utility with him. He is sort of a ranged damage doer. He has the ability to kind of shoot out arrows and do lots of damage. But he also can root some people in place. He can do some damage over time with the poison. And he has a little pool he can put down, which provides you some healy things. And also allows you to jump really high. So those are kind of two range characters that we got some direct experience with. But other variations, there's a lot of melee champions who have some really good mobility on the tankier end, can kind of get in your face if that's your play style. There's some more damage-heavy ranged classes. Really, everything you could possibly imagine with the initial hero release. You kind of got it all. You've got your assassins, You've got your sort of magic doers, just a really, really great assortment. If you're jonesing for some gigantic, and maybe you've never played a MOBA again, or before rather, I would definitely suggest either Smite or League of Legends. If you haven't tried either of those would probably give you a pretty good sense of at least the team play on that, and hero diversity.
Oh yeah,
as well. I'm just kind of getting used to the different roles, because that's sort of one thing that they do make a point to highlight, is that each champion sort of fills a role, be it primarily damage doing or supporting or soaking damage. And it's sort of the team's job to balance that out, make sure you've got the ability to kind of do all of those different things and use that as a team to succeed in your objectives. And in terms of objectives,
yes,
let's talk about really how you win the game.
So when you first set out, your main objective is to take control of some key points on the map where you summon creatures, and they build up your guardian's power. So in the game, there are 2 guardians, which are these huge giant animals. And
one would say they were gigantic.
Ha 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 ha!
It all comes together.
That was punny. That was punny. So, and then as the game goes on, there are intervals where the enemy's guardian will attack, and then that'll make your guardian vulnerable. And it's during this time that you need to protect your guardian from the enemy players, because it is only during this vulnerable time that the enemy players can attack the guardian in a special vulnerability spot on their tummy, as it were, and it's kind of like a glowing light, and that's the only place you can hurt it.
Just beat the crap out of the tummy.
Beat the crap out of the tummy. And that's how the game is won, is when you defeat the other team's guardian. Of course, there's a lot more strategy and than what I just portrayed, but
so this is sort of where Gigantic becomes really unique in this sense, because games like League of Legends, you're sort of pinned on this symmetrical map, and there are towers, inhibitors, champions, and little minions in between you and your objective, which is the Nexus. Whereas in Gigantic, it's more of a tug of war match. You can't really get to damaging the other team's guardian. They are physically on the map, which is cool. They move around, they move forward, but you can't actually physically damage the guardian until your guardian goes to attack. So each guardian has 3 health bars that typically, on at least the patch that we played at PAX East, you were able to burn down if you had like the whole team there wailing on the vulnerable spot. So theoretically, your team could win in 3 rounds of attacking the guardian. But from what we experienced, not necessarily in our game because we dominated, but the other games that we were watching, is that you can really just successfully defend, and it doesn't take as much damage, and you can actually kind of come back for some pretty epic wins if you do that right.
And also at the end of the game, the guardians actually come out of their ends of the arena and go into what's called a clash into the center of the ravine or the map.
I wish I had a lot more information on this, but I really don't. From what I recall, basically what happens when it's towards the end of the game, I don't know if it's based on time or if it's based on health, but both guardians move towards the middle of the map, and you, as I recall, I don't think you could take the little objectives anymore. We haven't really talked about those map objectives yet, which we'll get into those in just a moment, but basically it turns everything into a middle of the map death match, and the goal is just to kind of burn each other down and kill the other guardian.
It's kind of like the game saying, like, quit pussyfooting around, and exactly.
Essentially. Which, to make we didn't really cover it well, to make the other champion, or the other guardian rather, go vulnerable, what you need to do is you need to have good objective control. So you're taking different spots. The more spots you have, the higher upgraded they are, the quicker the bar fills up, and also gain kills. So it's half deathmatch, half tactical. Now, these objectives we've kind of referenced a few times in our conversation thus far. What they are these, at least in the map that we played, which is kind of this valley area. There's several points on the map. It's the same for each side. It's symmetrical. And what you can do is you can cap these spots, and you can place a little creature on top. The creatures have different abilities. As I recall, some give you health over time. There's one that gave you damage. And what was the third one? I think it gave you health. Sheer awesomeness. Health and sheer awesomeness. Don't quote me on that. No responsibility. Yeah, so you can capture these points, and they provide team-wide buffs, which is really helpful. If you control these spots, you control the map. If you can picture, again, referencing the tug-of-war scenario here, the map that we played is sort of a long canyon. So with there being, I believe it was 6 points in total, if you control 4, you're now fighting on their side of the map, and you have an advantage when you have to go and attack the other
You're
team's
in their
guardian,
jungle, as it were.
essentially. So it really becomes a strategic balance of winning out team fights and controlling objectives. So that's basically the game, really. Kill the other team's guardian, and do that by killing the other team and taking their objectives. So, Bridget, you're a new player.
I am.
To MOBAs specifically. You got a little bit of League experience, but talk to me about what your first impressions on Gigantic are.
It's kind of like when you first learn to drive, and you're looking right in front of the nose of the car and not where you should be looking, which is down the road. And I say that because when you first spawn in Gigantic, and when we were playing it at PAX, there is a catapult that catapults you into the arena. And there are 3 different circles. So there's one to the left, one to the center, one to the right. And I would always spawn on the left. So I just went to the first catapult, and it would shoot me out. And then I would just land just to the left of the little opening that I needed to get through to get to the rest of the arena. And I was like, why do I keep going to the left? Obviously, as time went by, I realized I needed to go to the center to go center. But once that was figured out, it was great. But I loved playing it as a newbie. You know, like in League, you use your mouse for direction and visibility. When this was kind of like, I don't know, like a World of Warcraft and League key combo, where your mouse clicks were also abilities. And then your movement was your, what was it, WASD?
The classic WASD.
The classic WASD. But I liked the mouse click just because when I panic,
you just fear.
I just click. I just fury click. So I'm glad that when I fury clicked, it was actually doing something and helping me. But I thought it was a great experience for a beginner.
Well, it's funny you mentioned sort of the controls. We didn't really talk about that too much. As Bridget said, movement, WASD to kind of go forward, back. Shift gives you kind of a sprint. It can also be used for a dodging mechanic so that you can kind of quickly hop around. The assassin's incredibly annoying with this ability, especially high mobility champions. It's just trying to kill them as arranged and also being able to use them as arranged was really fun. The buttons you typically use for your abilities are Q, E, F, which is kind of like your ultimate, but then left and right click, which is really nice. Like you were saying, your left and right click are typically pretty standard damage doing abilities. Yep. So it kind of allows relatively new users to MOBAs to really get to settle in and get comfortable pretty quick. You don't have to sort of memorize what your abilities do if you're trying something new or right away. You always kind of have that root of, okay, left and right are sort of my most basic abilities, and I can kind of get away with that until I get my bearings.
Yeah, it gives you the ability to have that learning curve.
Right. This also kind of gave me some really good faith as to how the Xbox version of this game will work, because the controls are so simple that it does seem like it'll convert well to a controller, which will be very interesting to see.
For some people.
For some people. But I think it's, again, one of those things where it depends on what you prefer to learn on. Kind of a funny experience that I'll share about our early adventures in gaming. The first time we played Forza. You have never played a driving game before.
No.
So when we were super pumped and got our Xbox and unwrapped it, we watched all the lovely Top Gear stuff unfold on the new Forza game. We were getting into it. We were getting exciting. And then, we got into that first race, and I'd sped away like crazy, and you just sort of sat there. And when you asked, how do I go, I just said, hit the gas. Because to me, being an experienced gamer, hitting the gas is just very naturally pushing the right trigger. But to you, it wasn't there. And that's obviously no fault of your own. You've never played a game like that before, so how would you even know?
Of course not. But, it was just funny because when I asked that question, how do I go? And you said hit the gas, it was followed by, how?
But I feel like Gigantic, just by the nature of the way the abilities are kind of laid out, having that left click, right click, I assume that's going to be like a left trigger, right trigger situation on the controller. It just feels a little bit more natural. While allowing sort of that scaling ability that you can, get used to and get really hunkered in on a champion hero.
Right. There's so much potential, though, for, some really big strategy plays.
Oh,
Especially not only with the creatures and the strategy in that sense, but also in the leveling sense of your abilities. Because so it's kind of like in League when it's item purchasing. There's a certain build you can build your champion as. It's similar in Gigantic but in a different way, because when you level up your abilities, you will hover over one of your abilities and almost like a tree of potential springs from it. So you could go left or right, and then you go right, click the right option, then more possibilities of leveling up. So you can really use strategy in that sense and build your hero the way you want to use it.
Absolutely. And if min-maxing is sort of your thing, you like to get in and kind of figure that stuff out beforehand, there's a really great website, ClashPoint, who already has pretty much all the information out there on hero abilities that exists. So you can kind of go in there and see what different options are available to you. Obviously, without the ability to play the game, unless you're in the alpha, it's super not fun to just sit there and kind of think, well, how might this work for me? But there's some beginner guides out there, and some people are sort of doing work already, piecing together some really neat guides, some theory crafting. It's great stuff. It really is. I mean, the community that has formed already is really already there with so little information. So definitely check out ClashPoint if that's the kind of thing you're into. I feel like maybe for future episodes, what we might start doing is kind of taking a look at heroes one by one, sort of like an end segment to the episode. And really just sort of talk about what their play style is going to be, what their different abilities are going to use, and then maybe some heroes we think might pair well. Without the ability to actually go ahead and play them in the game, who knows whether or not they'll work. But I think from just a beginner's perspective, it'll give you some ideas to the heroes that are out there and kind of get you hyped up for that.
It's a hypothetical world right now, but...
It's a hypothetical world of hype.
But when it becomes real, we're going to be so prepared.
Yes. So that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Gigantic Podcast. Be absolute sure to leave us feedback. All of it's been positive thus far, which is great. But don't feel too bad about sending us maybe some criticisms. You don't got to be a jerk. You don't got to be rude. I don't have to hate you. But if you have an idea, if you have a thought, if you want to give us some ideas of what we could cover in future shows, just reach out to us. We love to hear it. Even the bad stuff. I kid when I say I'll hate you forever unless you do something terrible, and then I will hate you forever. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't make them mad.
We're just a bunch of kidders here. But no, thank you so much for the support. We absolutely love it. Be sure to check out our website, giganticpodcast.com. I've been posting some articles up there, just my thoughts about what's going on. Most recently, you can read an article about my thoughts on Windows 10, maybe content for a future show, depending. Bridget, you had some stuff you were kind of working on.
I do. I've been playing with some blogs of my own. Beginner's blog, but also another one of my majors. I just majored in everything.
Pretty much. You're essentially the doctor.
I am.
Form.
It's true. But another one of my majors is history, and I've been seeing a lot of historical aspects of the heroes in Gigantic, and I'm thinking about kind of breaking them down in terms of, what inspired these heroes.
Which is exciting to me because we had like a 2-hour car ride last weekend or something like that, and you just like went off on all of the potential inspirations that's just from the art, and it's awesome stuff. So I'm looking forward to that article.
I'm really excited to writing it.
Yes, and maybe we'll cover it in a future show.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. But again, thank you for joining us for our second ever episode. Feel free to hit us up on iTunes. We're going to be coming soon to Stitcher. We're on YouTube for now for your Android users out there. But please, please, please leave us a review on iTunes. We absolutely love it. It helps out the show tremendously. And in the great words of Jeremy Clark, with that bombshell, good night.
Aww.